Hey guys, we've just gone through and edited the latest video. Unfortunately, we didn't realise at the time, but there's an annoying bloke on a cherry picker that keeps going backwards and forwards past our van. Alright, there's a lot of good content that the guy from Enerdrive, that Marius gives us, alright, so it is worth watching. It is a little bit long and it is a little bit boring, but if you're having problems with your battery or you need to know something, it's probably worth watching the whole video. Alright, I'll leave that up to you. This morning we just popped into Enerdrive on the south side of Brizzy down at Tingalpa. Just getting the guys to run us through the actual batteries, how to use it on normal power, how to use it when free camping, and different things to notice in it. I know when I got my hand over, it was very brief and very quick, and I had so much going on I didn't really take into account everything that was needed. So just popping down and seeing these guys is going to be very helpful. Marius is the guy that's going to give us a bit of a run through and a bit of a brief. Yeah, hopefully it'll help you guys out, and if you like the content and that, please subscribe and hit the like button, and yeah, we'll get into it. Now at the moment, right, when I rang up the other day, somebody mentioned to me do this, so I did that for them. Plugged into my house mains. Now the battery's at 100%.
Yeah.
Alright, and that's what they wanted me to do before bringing it down.
Yeah.
So the way the system is at the moment is how I have it sitting when it's on mains at home.
Yeah.
I just need to know, I don't know whether that's set up properly or not, as in the ePro.
So to keep the system stored with power at home, that needs to be on.
Right. I turned it off this morning after I unplugged it.
It's telling us it's in charger only mode.
Right.
So showing a little 2 there.
Yep.
So if you wanted the inverter on, you press the power button and then just dial that to normal mode.
Yep.
And you press it. You see it goes to 1, which turns the inverter on.
Okay, so on the actual inverter itself, it's got that little box that has a number down the bottom, then it has off in the middle, and then it has the 2 on the top.
Yeah.
So you're just remotely doing, as opposed
remotely
to
doing that, so you don't have to lift the bed or anything. You just do it from there. Because in general, you shouldn't have to go in underneath there. Because basically that's the only thing in this whole system that you can turn off and on. The rest, the solar charging, the vehicle charging, all of those things happen automatically. The AC charging, as soon as you plug AC in, happens automatically as well. Which is why, so it doesn't matter what number that is on, the charger is always enabled. Right. So as soon as you plug AC in, the charger will work. So
if you're on no power like we are at the moment, coming straight from the sun, should that be on 1?
Yeah, if you want to use AC power, if you want to use a microwave or anything like that, that needs to be on 1.
On the 1, right.
If you don't have a use for AC, you can leave it on 2, but the easiest is just to put it in standby. So if you don't need it, you just go standby and it switches it off. So it's not using that much power. If you leave it on the whole time, it pulls about nearly 1 amp just sitting there on. So over a period of 24 hours, it uses about 24 amp hours just being on. So
okay, now for instance, you've put in the standby at the moment, right? If I was using my fridge, can it stay in standby, or have I got to put it to one of the other modes?
So if it's running off AC, it needs to be inverter on.
Excuse my ignorance, AC.
Just normal AC power, the same as what the microwave does.
So 12, is that 12 volt or is it normal?
No, so your fridge normally got some different combinations. Some of them are 12 or 240, so just off the battery, or otherwise off the inverter, for instance. You don't want to run a fridge off the inverter the whole time because it adds up the amp hours. So normally, if the fridge has got a 12 volt option, you just let it run straight off the battery, and that's normally the most efficient.
I can't chop and change that, so I think it's a compressor fridge. I think it must run from the 12 volt or something like that.
Yeah. So that's basically the only thing that you're going to turn off and on.
when the house is on, when the van is on some sort of power, whether it's in a caravan park or at home, what is it best being on?
So when you plug into power,
yep,
you can have it in charger only mode.
Okay, that was a number 2.
That's number two.
Right.
So what happens when it's on number 2, if you plug AC in, the AC runs through the transfer switch in the inverter, in the combi unit, and it goes to the power points in any case. So as soon as you plug AC in outside, microwave will come on, your power points will have power.
Yeah, all these power points are 240.
Yeah.
They're all through the inverter.
Yeah, all switch over automatically.
Righto.
So, so that's all you have to know about that.
What about reading it? So, okay, battery voltage, that's telling me that there's 14 volts. Is that coming in or going out?
No, that's the voltage that it is measuring for the batteries on its terminals.
Okay.
And then there's battery current. You see, we're not drawing anything, so it says 0 amps. Now, if we were running AC in, you'd see the voltage there.
Yep.
But there's no AC plugged in.
Okay.
If we keep going, we see we don't have the inverter on, so that it doesn't show an AC out voltage either. If we had to change the mode, see now we got 230 volts AC output, but we don't have much load.
Yeah, no, there's nothing turned on.
Go put it back to charger only, for instance. You see the voltage disappears again because the inverter just switched off.
Yeah, with the E-Pro.
On that one,
yep.
Basically all you need to do is keep an eye on the percentage.
Can we just turn the light on? Okay.
So it's 100%.
Yep.
The battery is fully charged, so that's not an issue. And normally we can see what kind of load's on.
Yep. So that there amp hours, is that how many it's used? Is it 16.5 amp hours the van has used?
Okay. So that means that it's synced a little bit before the battery was totally full. Because the amp hour figure...
So what you're doing now, you just reset it, did you?
I just cleared it, because it should be 0 or it should be a negative. It should never be a positive figure. So if it syncs too early, and then there's a bit of current that still goes into the battery, it creates a positive, and you can just clear it. But normally it should just be 0 or negative, because that amp hour figure is telling you what's out of the battery.
So what would cause that?
Just the meter synced obviously a little bit before the solar stopped charging. So sometimes with the differences depending on what you're charging on, like the combi charge voltage might be 0.05 lower than the solar, because the combi's got a large output, so we lower it slightly, which means that potentially there's still a few amp hours that the solar can trickle in, and something like that could leave a small positive. But overall, in the capacity scheme of things, it's not going to throw the capacity out by much.
Alright, so if we
press it again.
Now it says 200 plus, now it's a 400 amp hour battery, so why doesn't it say...
So that's how many hours is left
in the battery?
At the current discharge rate.
Right.
So I can't really calculate it because it's more than 200 because we're not pulling anything. So you just see the 200 plus.
Yep.
There isn't a temperature. Temp sensor plugged into the battery monitor.
Is that normal?
Yeah, that's normal. I'll show you on the system down there. Yep. And you see we're seeing 13.96 roughly. So, which is the same as what we saw there basically.
Yeah.
14. So depending on where you're measuring, you see slight different voltages, and that's why you had a slight bit of a positive on the amp hour figure as well, because the battery monitor is measuring in one spot, the combi is measuring on its terminals, so it's two different places where it's measuring. So when the combi goes full, it means there might still be a few amp hours that need to go in to make the voltage point on the battery, which is why the solar can trickle in a few amp hours, and that's why we saw a little bit of discrepancy there.
All right, so just to confirm, number 2, which is what it's on at the moment,
Yep.
is when it's free camping or under no power.
When you leave it in storage, number 2. When you're free camping and you need to use something like the microwave or something, it needs to be on number 1.
Okay, so when it's sitting at home in my garage, not being used, just plugged into my house, so number 2.
Yeah, so like that, the way you see it there. Yeah.
Alright, excellent.
Because if that's not on, that means the charger is not on.
Alright, now, excuse my ignorance. So it's on number 2, but I leave, see how it's turned on at the moment, like if the power turns off.
No, you leave it like
it is.
You leave it on
while it's on power.
And you plug it in. Yeah.
Alright, cool.
So number 2 with a caravan park as well.
Yeah. If you pulled into a powered site, plug
anyway.
power in, just put it on number 2.
What if you're using a generator? Does that include this power into the van? So would that be the same?
Same scenario. Basically, it's AC that you're feeding in.
Yeah.
You can actually adjust how much current is coming in for the AC.
Yep.
So if you press that twice, or you press it again, you see there's an AC in current limit. Now yours is set to 10 amps, which would be for a normal power point.
Yeah. You guys actually talked me through that. I've got it written down in my phone because I actually rung his up.
Yeah.
And he's actually explained how to change it all for what it should be on. So the reason that's on that at the moment is because that's what the house was bringing in. Now I think 15, if it's under solar, like you can crank it up, I think he was saying.
Yeah, you can set it to 15, but then you either need to have 15 amp power feed or otherwise,
It's your phone.
So that's dependent on you actually having to do anything. Yeah. So as long as you set the current, so whatever is coming in, that figure is correct, be it 10 amps or 15 or the gen set on about 7.5.
Now the charge, that was the other one that they spoke about. See, it's on 60 amps. I think that was for when it was plugged into the house. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can dial it back, because if you leave it at home plugged in, you don't need to hit the battery with 120 amps because you plugged in for hours and hours. So you can dial it back to 50. You can dial it back up as well if you want. Quite often we'll tell people to leave it around about the 80% mark, which is like 96 amps, because it's enough of a charge rate. Some people just leave it on 100%.
Alright, so where that was there at 50%, 60 amps, that's when I've got power coming into it. But if we're out free camping, I then dial it back up to...
No, you can leave it there when you're free camping as well. It means that when the charger is running off the gen set, it'll pull about 1050 watts off the gen set, which means you probably have about another 900 watts coming off the gen set that are available to run loads via the power point. So if you're running something that's not very heavy, like just 400 watts to charge laptops or something like that, you can charge your laptops while the gen set's running and the batteries are getting charged up as well.
I guess it's all trial and error once we actually get out there and start. So at the moment I'm waiting for our proper car to come, which is a 200 series, and we should get that around about the 21st of March. It's been chopped and all jazzed up. So once we get out and do our shakeout, well, I guess I'll go for the weekend. If I run out of power, then I know I've done something wrong. But
it's just to balance the amount of AC that's coming in with how much you charging the battery with whatever loads you want to use, which is why that charge rate's adjustable. If you're not going to run any load and you want to charge your batteries up quicker, you can turn the charge rate up, but you got to stay within the capabilities of the gen set basically. Where if you're on 100%, you're basically going to max out the gen set.
But if we're not using the gen set, we're just using solar from the sun, you want it on the highest to get in as much, don't you, or just leave it?
The batteries will just take whatever they can get. So the solar charging is independent from that, and it'll just pull whatever it can from the panels. So they're all smart chargers. So as soon as the one sees that it doesn't need to output its full output, it'll just drop its output. So it's all automated, you don't need to.
Alright.
It just automatically decides, oh, that one's delivering all the charge to the batteries, so I don't need to do anything.
On my phone, I used to have an Enerdrive app, because in my BT50 I had Enerdrive batteries and all that, and I could, with my phone, I could just check and show me how much power was in the batteries and that. Can I still do that with these or not?
No, but there's a dongle that you can plug into that shunt,
Right.
which will give you an app, also an Enerdrive app, but it's a different app.
Do you guys sell this dongle?
Yeah.
How do I plug it in?
It just plugs into the shunt, so if you want to lift the bed, I'll just give you a quick rundown of what's under there.
I don't know why I did not do that way. Built this whole thing.
So that's your battery.
Yep.
Your combi. You see we've got the inverter lights red because we in mode 2.
Yep.
On the remote, so it locks the inverter out.
Alright. Now, does it matter where, what you've done up there on the switch, does it matter where this button is?
Just leave that on position 2.
Oh,
so
fine.
Physically don't change this, just use the remote. If you end up in a low battery scenario, normally that pops
trips.
out.
Yep, that's what happened to me. My battery went down to below 24%.
Yeah.
And obviously I worked out something had tripped. And then when I spoke to somebody on the phone, they said, oh, is the yellow button down or up? So I had to trip it to put it back down.
Turn it back, push it back
There was
down.
also another thing underneath the seat over there that had a little button that flicked around. I had to actually push it back as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, so that trips. When you're storing it with power, you don't touch anything under here. You just make sure the remote's on. So, yeah, so it all stays on. You just have the combi on the other side in position 2, and that'll maintain the batteries. Now normally when you look at, that's the brains, normally those 5 lights need to be green.
Right.
If you have an issue, like if that's popped or something is wrong, we're going to ask you which lights are red.
Yep.
And we're going to ask you which green light's missing, because the green light that's missing tells us why it's tripped.
Alright, now there is is that a 4th green light?
Yeah, but you're not going to see it because it's not in use at this point.
Okay,
so it's only the 3.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Now, this I believe, is that for the solar panels?
That's the solar controller. So that's for the roof array, and that'll just work on its own. There's no display on it or anything. You just see a little light indication typically.
Yep.
You'll see it's green. You've got to be fairly square on to see it.
I can see it. It's blinking.
Yeah, those are pretty bulletproof. They just tick away, and then the DC next to it, which is charging from the vehicle. And it doesn't look like they've wired in an extra Anderson on the side for you, but normally
no, I'm getting them to do that on my first service. I asked for it, they never did. There's a few things they didn't do, so that's for a solar blanket. I have got an Anderson on the side, but it's grey, so that's power out. I need one for power in, which is blue, I believe.
Yeah, you can make it blue or red.
So they're going to put that on for me on the 15th, 16th when it goes up to JB. So
yep, so they'll do that for you. The shunt is right down the bottom there.
Yep.
Now, quite often we'll ask you if there's a green light on there.
Yep.
It flashes down
just
the
seen it
bottom.
flash in, yep.
Yeah. No, that's where the other dongle will plug in. That'll give you Bluetooth to your phone.
Right.
And
is it worth having?
It's about $200 in general. Quick look at the meter. You see the state of charge percentage. If it's like anything above 50 typically, you go, yeah, don't need to do anything. So you probably don't need the Bluetooth dongle.
Righto.
Yeah.
I guess it would save if you're inside the house or something and you were just checking the van, you could just check it on your phone as opposed to coming out, unlocking it all, going, oh, everything's running well. But
depending on how far the van's away from the house.
Yeah.
Because Bluetooth's only about 10 or so meters typically, so that's the only other thing.
Yes, yep, okay.
So pretty much everything under here you're never going to touch unless you have an issue. So the other way of storing the van is without any power. So you plug AC in, you fully charge the batteries, and then you switch the AC off. You wait till it's evening so the solar isn't active and charging. Turn
Trip
the
him
yellow
off,
switch,
yep, the red one.
Turn the red one off.
And still leave that where it is, don't have to put that to 0?
As soon as you turn that, it disconnects the power that comes here. Okay, so if you follow this cable,
yep,
it's that one there.
Yep.
So as soon as you trip that, it disconnects the power to this. When you're putting it in storage without power, I'd probably just say switch that off in any case.
Yeah.
Before you turn the yellow switch off, because nothing likes having the battery disconnected while it's on. Which is why I say it's probably easier to do it in the evening, because then there's no solar active or anything.
Yep.
So fully charge it during the day, and then just in the evening shut the system down, or if it's late afternoon or early morning, so there's not a lot of charge going in, because you don't want to cause a voltage spike.
Yep.
If you just go and turn that off while the charger's on, normally there's a voltage spike of about 16 or 17 volts that goes through the DC bus. So we try and avoid those kinds of things.
Alright, well that should be just about covered everything. Alright Marius, thank you very much for that. Really appreciate your time, and you boys have been really helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers mate. If I have any other problems in the drone, I'll just give you a call, but I think you've just fixed everything for me. Before I go, why is a bee's hair sticky? Because they use a honeycomb. Catches.